The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. Joining me today on the panel are Jack Baruzzini. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Dom.
Folks, I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy called Let's Science. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/science. That's a natural fit for our show. If you like Secrets of Tech,
Definitely.
You will enjoy it. It's about 20 minutes long to a half hour at the most. They cover one interesting scientific topic usually each time, and it's a lot of fun. Carolyn does a great job, and they have Australian accents, so that makes it even better. So let's talk about our topics for tonight. Our first segment, we want to talk about free and open source software. And I've got the two guys perfect for this here tonight. I've saved this topic for you guys because I know that this is something near and dear to both of you. And so we're going to talk about free software, open source software, our favorite stuff, things we can recommend in various categories for Linux, for Windows, for Mac. It's we got all the bases covered. But first, we should start with what is open source software? Because we talk about free software, open source software. What is open source software when we use that term?
So open source software, in my opinion, and this is actually a debated topic. So this is not like a settled issue, even amongst the community of people that's really into open source stuff. Open source, in my opinion, is software that is accessible at the level that I can do something to modify it if I want to. So if I have something that I need done in the software, there's a community that I can go and talk to ask for help getting that done. If I can write code myself, I can get involved in writing the code for it. And that to me is what it means to have open source, that it's not privatized to the point that, if I wanted to have, for example, Adobe's the one I always like to pick on, right? So if I wanted to fix something inside of Adobe, I have to go to Adobe and likely pay for the right to even start suggesting something to them that should be fixed.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good definition. And in general, but not always, open source software is non-commercial or free anyway. Correct?
It's a mixed bag there, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of room to that. I'm not going to talk about any, like in our list tonight. I don't think it's as relevant to talk about business level open source software. But there's a ton of business level open source software that drives everything that's going on, and it's open source in the sense that it is available. The code is available, but you pay to use it at a corporate level. So once you get into the enterprise level and you want a dedicated support person that knows the software really well, that knows the code really well, you pay the group that's maintaining it to have that, and sometimes you even dedicate a resource from your team to that open source project. So that person becomes a manager for like a messaging service that you have inside of your corporation, and they contribute to the code for that particular open source project.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So our goal tonight is to talk. Almost all the software we talk about will be open source, but not all of it. Some of it is not open source. It is proprietary. The programmer it's a single programmer who's working on it, and they haven't released the code or whatever. But all of it is going to be free. I'm pretty sure, and you can correct me if there are ones that aren't there, but I'm pretty sure that all of it is generally free for personal and nonprofit, religious and educational use, that sort of stuff, and often at the even for non-corporate. So for like small business, it's usually okay for a lot of these things. So our aim here is to talk about free, mostly non-commercial software. I think that's the idea. And much of it is open source. And so what the old phrase is free as in beer and free as in speech. So free beer is beer that is given to you for free. Free speech is just, it's conceptually free. It's conceptually free of other encumbrments, that sort of thing. So I think I'm on target with that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's just get started talking about some of this, leave the philosophy behind and talk about some of the actual software. And I want to kind of start with talking about some of the cross-platform software, the stuff that works. When we say cross-platform, we usually mean it works on Intel Windows type PCs, Linux operating system, and Mac. Usually all three, sometimes two of the three, but it usually works on more than one. And so one I want to highlight that I've talked about before, I just mentioned it briefly, is like, for example, Homebridge. Homebridge is software that will run on several different platforms. I have it running on a Raspberry Pi, which is a Linux computer, a very small, inexpensive Linux computer. And it's a smart home hub software that runs plugins that control various pieces of a smart home. And so that is an example of open source. It's open source, so it's a communal programming project. It's also free to use. There are commercial products that are similar that are out there. Like I'm pretty sure Home Assistant is I shouldn't talk about it until I've looked at it. But there are other commercial products out there that do similar things. But this is free, which means in one sense, there's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not as simple to use, perhaps, as maybe a polished commercial product. But on the other hand, there are polished, quote unquote, commercial products that are not easy to use either. So that's not neither here nor there. So it
depends on how much work you want to put in it personally versus spending time on the phone with customer service. Right?
Right. Exactly. So that's just like one. So let's talk about like some that are, say, in the productivity office type space. Like if we all know about Microsoft Office, but what are some other options that people might have if they want to go for something that's free and open source?
One that I like a lot is LibreOffice.
Yep.
It's got all the typical things that you'd see in an Office suite. I believe it's a branch off of OpenOffice. They used to be the same project, and then LibreOffice branched off it several years ago. And as that fork happened, I feel like LibreOffice has really fixed a lot of the issues that I had with OpenOffice. But it's really good. It's got a word processor. You can do spreadsheets. It's got basically a PowerPoint replacement. And you can open any of the files that you'd open with Microsoft Office. Like it's cross-compatible. And unless my attitude at this point with Office productivity software is, unless you're in a corporate environment, you really don't need to use Microsoft Office.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And I would honestly say, unless you're like on Office 365 or a Google environment, there's really no reason to have a professional. A home version of a professional Office software, honestly.
Right. If you're unless you're using something for a company environment, a work environment, like if you just need something that runs at home on your PC, there's no point, your PC or Mac or Linux, there's no point paying for Office or paying, I mean, Google, the Google Sheets, Google Docs, that's sort of free at a certain level, but a lot of people are paying for that just in order to get past all of the limitations that they impose. So having something like LibreOffice, OpenOffice, and then OpenOffice is that part of Apache, I guess, which is interesting. Apache is they make a lot of the web server software out there. They were the big one for a long time. I don't know if they still are. I think that's been changing a little bit, but a lot of the internet runs on Apache web servers. So they must have taken in-house. I missed that, but they must have taken OpenOffice in-house for them. So it's kind of interesting.
I think it's one of those things when you get a bunch of nerds together and they're like, why are we paying for this when we can just write it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Exactly.
And then you get the branches. You get like a team that's like, no, I don't like working on the networking stuff. I really want to just focus on this Office thing. And that's where you end up with like, LibreOffice branching off and doing their own thing. And that's in my opinion, that's the best part of the open source environment, where it's like it's a bunch of guys get together, they're doing stuff, and then you get this one group that's really passionate about this one tiny little stupid thing that they love, and they make a whole project out of it. And that's what they dedicate their next, all of the free time that they have to code. That's what they dedicate it to, is working on that thing.
Right. It's a passion project as opposed to just something I do to earn my paycheck.
Exactly.
Right. Something else that's really good about, I was thinking specifically for office productivity suites, but this just goes for open software in general, is pretty much everything now is moving towards a subscription model. Like you can still buy Microsoft Office as a one-time download, but you have to click through like 4 different pages and it's a huge hassle. And even then you cannot, and I just found this out recently, you cannot just go buy the software off the shelf and install it, put in your code and you're good to go. You have to have a Microsoft account and you have to keep it logged in, because if you log out, it's going to kick you out of the software. And with like LibreOffice or OpenOffice, that's not a problem. You just install it and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's a constant issue for me because I have Microsoft Office and I have the apps on my iPad, and I'm constantly I'm trying to get something done. I open up Excel on my iPad and it wants me to log in again. I'm like, I'm logged in. How many times do I have to log in for you to stay logged in? Yeah, those frustrations. Yeah.
So I've got one more in this arena too, of just the desktop publishing things. I did the church bulletin at our church for a little while, and I didn't want to pay for the Adobe InDesign, which is the kind of industry standard for layouts and design work. Scribus is an open source desktop publishing software that does all of that stuff. So if you have worked with InDesign in the past, if you've ever laid out like a yearbook digitally, or a newspaper, a newsletter, or if you've ever been at that point where you just want to slam your head into the desk because you put that picture in Word and it threw everything off, this is the program for you. Go for Scribus, free open source desktop publishing software.
And do you know if it's compatible with Microsoft Publishing Docs, either Microsoft Publisher? Because that was one of the things that drove me nuts, was so many when I worked on the church bulletin, so many church bulletin companies, they want you to use Microsoft Publisher, assuming that you're on a PC, because there's no Microsoft Publisher for Mac. And so I ended up like working with InDesign and outputting, having to jump through hoops to get it into a format that they could use. So I don't
remember, we got lucky with our publisher because they just wanted PDFs. Like that was the output that they wanted. So that was really nice. I could just output the PDF. But I think I remember Scribus being able to output pretty much any kind of file format you wanted it to.
Wow. It will run on OS2 Warp 4. Wow. It's like it took a time machine back in time. That's amazing. So that's good. I mean, it's great. And that's the other thing I didn't mention, is like for like churches and schools where budget is always an issue. These sorts of things, free is good.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay these huge prices for the Adobe Creative Cloud and the Microsoft Office. So it's good to see that. That's something that a lot of churches could use.
And a big advantage too is like if you want tutorials for this kind of stuff, you can go online and you go to YouTube and find a tutorial for how to use this thing so that you can learn it right there.
Exactly. So another category is media consumption, media production. There's one piece of software that I recommend for everyone. It's like it is the toolbox for playing video files. It'll play nearly any video file you throw at it, called VLC or Video LAN Player. And this thing is, I don't know, it's been around forever, and it does it all. It's a really great piece of software.
Fantastic. I second that recommendation. It's any machine I get on. That's one of the first things I download.
Yeah. It's also required on Windows now if you want to play DVDs, because since Windows 10, you cannot natively play a DVD on Windows for some reason.
Oh, wow. That is wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Another one that, a lot of churches figured out to use during the lockdown when they wanted to live stream their masses, OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. It's open source live streaming software. There are commercial packages out there for this, but and they have a commercial version. Like I think there's like OBS, there's a version of this where you could pay and you get extra, you get more, but there is a free open source version of this that runs Windows, Mac, and Linux.
And I swear by this one. This is fantastic. Any YouTube videos I make, that's what I used. I can almost bet for every single one of them. But that's my kids too. Like I got them into it because they're like, I want to make YouTube videos, and I'm like, here's the software, go for it.
Right. And it's professional level software. I mean, it's it's not like your local TV station level, but it's whatever level next down from that. It will look professional the more you put into it. Piece of software that we use all the time here at StarQuest is Audacity. It is a free open source cross-platform record. We use it mainly to record our, each individual participant records their own audio locally, and that's what we do. But it can also do basic editing as well. I used to use this when I worked on a broadcast radio show. At the end of we would record the show, and at the end of the show, we'd output it from Audacity and put it out as a podcast. I mean, this is a great piece of software.
I use it to mix music, so you can do mashups where you just grab two pieces of music that are very similar, and you can lay them over top of each other. You have the waveforms, and you just match them up, and then you can cut one out. It's like DJing the songs together. It's a lot of fun.
And then Kden Live, I don't know that one.
So this one's great. This is a video editing software similar to Adobe Premiere, which is a very high quality video editing software. So if you want to put videos together and chop them up and put intros and outros and check the music or add music to the video or whatever, Kden Live is fantastic for that. So if you're used to the Adobe Premiere style where it's just got kind of like a track bar at the bottom and all of your video stuff laid out on it, Kden Live is the one for that. And then the next one that I have is Natron, which is an alternative to that, where it's more like After Effects in the way that it works. So it takes the videos and allows you to edit effects onto them. I like Natron. It's the learning curve is super steep though, because it's like a graph editor version of things. So you have to learn how to put nodes together and track things back and forth to each other. Very confusing if you don't know what you're doing, but a lot of fun.
Interesting.
Nice.
And this is a good good example of the difference between like free open source versus free, which is there's like Blackmagic Design, which they make a lot of video hardware. They have a program called DaVinci, which is that video editing software. It's free, but they own it. It's commercial, and so that's the difference between it. Whereas, nobody generally owns like an open source, like they do and they don't, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's contributed to by lots of people. And so, you don't have to worry that one company is going to decide, well, we're done. We're taking it off the market and, go find something else to use, with stuff like this. If the person who controls the project goes away, well, someone is going to say, I'm forking this project off into a new version. I'm going to do it. And so, that's one of the nice differences. I want to mention Handbrake. This Handbrake is a great piece of software for, especially if you've got a whole collection of DVDs or Blu-rays now, if you have the right hardware, that you would like to bring into the 21st century and put on something like a home media server. It's a Ripper. So it's not a Ripper. I misspoke, because there's other software for that. It's a transcoder. It will take the format of the native format that's on the like DVDs were like in VOB format. I think it was the VOB, and translates it into a form that your computer can then play natively. Whether it's your PC, you can transcode it for a phone or for a home media library or whatever. And Handbrake is great for that. I've used it for so many projects.
Something I like about Handbrake, it's actually, I think, the first piece of open source software I ever used, because I wanted to put DVDs on my iPod video back in the day, and Handbrake is able to do it. And I appreciate that they still have the option to export to the video iPod in their thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's actually, it's like these open source projects will often, cater to very small niche audiences. They will serve your needs. Yeah, that is awesome.
They have a whole command line tool utility for Handbrake that I use, and so I have it set up like when I pop a DVD into my Plex media server, it automatically rips it using Ripper software and then transcodes it using Handbrake into whatever style I want and dumps it into it. So it just takes care of it for me. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Nice. Then we have we go from video editing to photo editing, and there's some nice software in that area too. There's the grand old daddy GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program. This has been around for ages, and these kind of compete with either like Photoshop or Illustrator generally. Have either of you guys used GIMP?
Love it.
It's GIMP is great, but it is very hard to learn. I will say that. So it's not something you can just jump into. But the good thing is, because it's open source, there's a really big community for it, and there's tons of resources out there.
Yeah, and generally speaking, if you learn if you learn GIMP well enough, if you get started with GIMP enough, you can watch a video tutorial for Photoshop and do the same thing in GIMP. You just have to know what the tools translate to.
Right. Once you understand the how the tool works, then the techniques translate pretty readily.
Right.
And then there's Krita.
Yeah, so Krita is a really cool art program that is so there's a difference between a photo editor and a digital art program. A photo editor is all about taking an image that exists and manipulating it into something else. Well, where Krita comes in is it's an open canvas. So it's what's called an infinite canvas art program, and it's designed with a digital artist in mind. So if you have a kid who likes to do digital art, especially if they have like a bamboo tablet or something like that, this is a great program for them, because it really is built around just getting ideas on the paper, like on a blank canvas, and it gives you infinite space to scroll, so you can zoom way into tiny little details and then zoom way back out to the big picture and all of that. Absolutely fantastic. My artist daughter loves it. She will go to that before GIMP every day of the week.
Right. Nice. And then there's another one called Inkscape as well.
And so this one is the third graphics design of things, where this is called vector graphics. So this is when you're making designs that you're going to put on a t-shirt or blow up to be on a billboard or use as a logo. So not as much manipulation, but very mathematical. Everything that you put on this one is, designed around shapes and filling in those shapes. The corollary is, I think Adobe Illustrator is the one that it kind of matches back up to,
right,
from the Adobe side of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you know the difference between vector illustration and, the art, and you'll understand the differences, right? If you've done any of this stuff before. And then from there, we go from the 2D to the 3D, where we have some 3D modeling, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so Blender 3D, I will beat the drum every day of the week for this one. Love this program, 3D design program. It works for 3D design for printing, works for 3D design for art, for videos. My daughter wanted me to point out that it has a very, very nice animation studio built into it, just kind of by accident, because they do this onion skinning layering thing, so she can draw up to 4 layers back and forward, seeing what her art's doing. So it's got like an 8-layer deep onion skinning. So she wanted me to mention that.
Nice.
But yeah, it does a lot. It's a really great, really big program. Very, very steep learning curve on this one though.
Even does vector video special effects, like the CGI basically.
Right.
Yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff in it. It's more powerful than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of some like movies or TV shows, they use some big expensive things, but for some stuff, I wouldn't be surprised to find this on computers at Lucasfilm or some of these other places, Weta, for certain particular purposes, because it's that powerful. There's a great.
Or just got a guy that was so good at it that you hired him, and it's like, no, I'm going to keep using this program, darn it.
Yeah,
right. I always like to point people to the Big Buck Bunny animated movie, which is a great illustration of what it was done by the community, and it is good as any Warner Brothers cartoon. My kids used to watch that over and over again when they were little, because it was like they loved it. I mean, it's funny, and the technically animation, it's amazing, and it was all this open source community did it. So from that, and then we have 3D that we use in games, right?
Yeah. So this is one that I've moved to. It's the Godot game engine, and it's I don't know if it's Godot or Godot, but I prefer to Frenchify it, I think.
Yes, we're waiting for
but
it.
It's
waiting for Godot.
Exactly. So it is a game engine that's comparable to Unity or Unreal. And to be fair, Unity and Unreal are both free softwares that you can use up to a certain point. Whereas Godot is an open source game software. So you can contribute to the code for Godot. You can find the community members. You can ask for certain features. If there are things that are missing that you need for your game, that community is very responsive and very good at helping build the tools that are needed to work for anything that's out there.
I was going to say, and if you learn how to model in Blender, you can make all your game models in there and then use them in your Godot game.
Right. And that's the thing, is it is a game engine. So if you want to create a game, and game could be any sort of simulation, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be literally a game, but it could be a simulated world for, I mean, an architect could use something like this to model a building, that sort of thing. So
absolutely,
you use for all kinds of things. So let's go to some other utility type things. So we've talked about open source password managers before. We mentioned KeepPass when we were talking about LastPass alternatives. So I should mention that. How about there's a great networking utility that one of you put down here.
Do you want to take this one, Jack? I know you probably use it.
Oh, Wireshark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program. It's basically, if you want to map out anything on your network, you can use this. You can analyze packets. You can I use it if I need to find out like what suspicious devices are running on the corporate network that we have. You just turn it on, you can see everything, and it's free. It's pretty easy to use. And I'm pretty sure every single sysadmin has this in their back pocket, no matter what level they're at.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, it's a really useful tool.
Yeah,
right. Everybody who has to run even your home Wi-Fi network, if you've got multiple people on it, it can be useful. And then for games, having fun, there's lots of open source gaming stuff out there. I'm particularly interested in this first one. I'm guessing, Thomas, you put this one on there. Multi-MC?
This one's mine. This is absolutely by far and away one of the best little pieces of weird random open source software I've found. It's called Multi-MC. It is a Minecraft launcher. So you might think, okay, well, I have a Minecraft launcher. Why do I need this thing? Does it all? Like you install it. You can install Minecraft without having to go download Minecraft from somewhere. You have to have an account still, so you have to like sign into your account. But then if you want to mod Minecraft, you just go in and say, okay, I'm going to go to the AT launcher. I want this particular mod. Boom, it builds the instance for you. You don't have to dump a whole bunch of junk into it. And then if you want to mod it further, you go into the actual instance and just say, I want to add this mod. And you just click a couple of buttons and you download the mod from CurseForge and just drop it right in there. And it just works. It's fantastic. I will never go back to another Minecraft launcher after this one.
Great. Yeah. My kids have in the past few months gotten into Minecraft. So this is timely.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
And dinner conversations are now peppered with, I found ancient relics. Oh, I'm mining diamonds. I'm like, it's all Greek to me now. What else have we got in the gaming category?
I put in there RetroArch. It is a fantastic, it's a front end for your emulators. And basically what an emulator is, it's a piece of software that it will mimic a Nintendo 64 or a Sega or anything like that. And the nice thing about RetroArch is that it puts it all in a really nice package for you. And it also lets you download the emulator straight through there. So getting into retro gaming and emulated gaming can be kind of intimidating. But with RetroArch, you just download it, you go through, you pick the emulators you want, it installs them. It has like the recommended engines with the recommended settings, and you just point it at your game files and you're good to go.
Brilliant. Nice. Oh, they have
a pretty good one.
Something called Open Lara, which is a recreation of early Tomb Raider games.
Oh yeah, they've got that. They've got a Doom one. Metroid. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
So the last one I want to put in here is I love roguelikes. This is like one of my favorite genres of games. So if you don't know what a roguelike is, it's a game that is infuriating in its simplicity. Everything is randomly generated, and you are going to die. Like you are going to die many, many, many times. The whole purpose of the game is that you as a player get better. Not that your character does level up and advance throughout the game, but you're supposed to start figuring out strategies and puzzle solve as a player and go through until you finally learn the mechanics of the game. And one of the most frustrating ones that I found that I absolutely love and always return to is called Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. Lots of generated options. There's an incredible group on Reddit that's that talks about doing runs and how far they've gotten. I still have not beaten this game. I've been playing it for years. and it's one that I'm actually trying to beat, as opposed to just I'm playing it until I get bored of it and move on to something else. So
nice.
Highly recommend this one. A lot of fun, really good community behind it too.
Awesome.
Nice.
I want to mention a few Mac specific free and open source software. One is called Homebrew, and this is a package manager. And what this does is you use it in the terminal, which is that program that's in the utilities folder inside the applications folder that many people have never opened. But it's the command line. And what it does is it allows you to install software from the command line with just the command brew, install, and then the name of the software package. And so it's sort of a package for packages. It's software to get other software. And there's a lot of little programs that you can get that are really great. One of them is called TLDR, too long, didn't read. And it's a better, if you know anything about command line stuff, you know that like command line commands will have something called a man page or manual. So you type man and then the name of the command, and it will give you an explanation. Well, TLDR is better because it gives you examples of how it would be used. So that's a really nice thing. And there's they also have packages you can get from other people. So there's this one guy, Smitty Tone Software. He's got ones like Image Prep, which is a image optimization program, and PDF Maker, which will make PDFs for you, as the name suggests. All of this open source and free. They have I want to skip one I mentioned because it would take too long to explain it, but there's one called I use every single day for every podcast we do called Image Optim, and it does one thing, which is optimize images for use online. And it basically compresses the image by throwing out unnecessary data. Every image has like metadata and EXIF data, like locations and all kinds of stuff. All that taking up space. I don't need it when I'm making the podcast cover art, for instance. That all got to go. And I can save. Let's see. Just this week, I've saved 34% on all of my, an average of 34%, save a third. And we're talking about these image files can be 2, 3, 4 megabytes. And like YouTube won't let you use a cover image that's more than 2 megabytes. So, this is great. It's easy to use. I just drop 5 images on there at once and it just crunches them all. And because I'm on a Silicon Mac, it uses all those cores to its full potential. I mean, I can see my cores ramp up in the software. And so it's really great. So, and then 2 more I talked about last week, so I'll just mention them again. Eclectic Light Software and the Objective-C Foundation. These are not open source, but they're free. Eclectic Light has a bunch of little utilities that do amazing little things. Just go and explore. I'll put the links in the show notes. I mentioned a few last time, and the Objective-C Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit that makes security tools for Macs, and these are amazing tools. Like just this, and Patrick Wardle is kind of a legend. He's always speaking at the Black Hat Hacker Conference every year. And these tools are phenomenal. I have a handful of them running on my Mac, all my Macs, all the time. It's really great. So I wanted to mention those again. So how about for Windows? What kind of free and open source can we put on Windows that's specific to Windows?
There's actually a lot, and anything you look at for Linux, there's usually a Windows equivalent. That's the nice thing about open source software, is that the reason our cross-platform section is the biggest is because most things are cross-platform. But there's things like Putty, which is a SSH client. That's one of the old ones. I think it's been around for probably at least 20 years now.
Oh yeah.
But that's a really good one. And the one thing I like about it is that people, whenever I'm talking to people about it and I tell them the name, they're always like, what does that stand for? It's like, it doesn't stand for anything. They make a point of that.
It's just the name they put on it.
Yeah. That's funny.
And, so a couple that I use that make Windows feel a little bit more like Linux for me is I like Vim. So there's a gvim, which is like a Windows version of Vim, and there's also Git Bash, which is a Git program for Windows that gives a Bash scripting feel to anything you do with Bash. So if you've gotten used to running all the commands on Linux and you suddenly go over to Windows and you're trying to use this UI and you're like, I just want to type the thing and upload it. Please stop making me try to click through stuff. Git Bash is a really great one.
Nice. Actually, Vim could be in the cross-platform category because it's also on the Mac. So
yeah. Technically, you can get it on all three. Mm-hmm.
But say I can't tell you how many times I type ls into the command line on Windows, and it's like, what does that mean?
Right? Windows like, nope, that's not a command.
Yep. Another really good one is Notepad++, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Notepad tool, but it's a lot more than that. It gives you all sorts of features that you don't get in the standard Notepad. You can even actually just write code in it if you wanted to, but it's great, especially if you're dealing with a lot of like JSON files or JavaScript or anything that's more complex than you just want to jot down a note. It's definitely worth downloading.
Nice.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times that saved my butt just trying to figure out something. And, you try and open it in Notepad and Notepad either crashes because it can't handle the size of the file, or it just looks awful because it's just there and there's no real search feature or anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Another two I wanted to mention are VirtualBox. It's another Apache product, and it's for running virtual machines. It's an open source alternative to VMware or Hyper-V. It's nice. It's lightweight. If you want to try out Linux and you're not ready to jump over and you're on Windows, it's a great way to get started because you can install a Linux virtual machine and run it on there. And another one that's really good is called BleachBit, and it's essentially an open source alternative to CCleaner, which is one that gets used a lot. It will go through and delete all your metadata and your cached files and stuff like that, just to help free up extra space on your computer.
Okay. It's like a system cleaner software.
Right. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. And so what else? Anything left to talk about?
Well, see, this is the problem. Like, if it's on Linux, it's open source. So, I was like, what is some Linux specific open source software? So I got two. I was like, okay, Vim, which we already talked about. It's a cross-platform thing.
Yep.
But there's one that's really like, this one is, and there's no website for this. It's just a tool that you can download from just about any Linux repository. It's called Conky, and it essentially just puts usage statistics on your desktop. So where you have your desktop background, it actually just overlays that with usage statistics from your machine. So it just keeps track of like disk usage, of memory usage, of the core temperatures. So any of the sensors or anything that you have access to inside of your machine, very, very good tool. I love it. I use it all the time. And I like, because it just sits there on the background. So instead of having to open up a terminal and run the commands that I always forget and have to look up, it's just right there.
Nice.
Excellent. I mean, this is just scratching the surface of that. I mean, there's so much out there. We could do a whole podcast series forever about it. And there are actually podcast series that are out there just about open source software. So just, consider this a dip of the toe into the waters of free and open source, just to consider some things that are out there. And, I'm sure we'll come back to this again in the future as we find more ones we want to talk about. But if you have any particulars that you're interested in, you want to talk about, you want to ask us about or recommend to others, feel free to drop us a line, send us an email to technology@sqpn.com, or better yet, join our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord, where we're having great conversations. I'm learning stuff every day in there, not the least which from Matt the Farmer, who joined us a little while ago, who keeps telling us all this amazing tech that farmers use. And I'm like, farmers are underappreciated. They have some amazing stuff going on out there. So definitely join us over there in our Discord server and, start a conversation about it. All right, let's move on to first. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons for who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Michael G, Robert H, Mary S, Jazette S, and Mary H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give, hit the donate button, make a tax-deductible gift, because we are a 501c3. April 15th is coming up, so I just figured I should mention that.
That's a good spot, yeah.
All right, let's talk about some headlines. And the first headline is it relates to a current event that's kind of a big crime story that people have got attention to. But I want to talk about the technology aspects of it. And the headline is out of the Washington Post: Memphis's Sky Cop cameras couldn't prevent the Tyree Nichols' beating. Now, the Tyree Nichols was a black man who was killed by a group of police, and there's a whole case going on involving that. And I don't want to talk too much about that. I mean, we're not really a crime police podcast, but I want to talk about the role of these Sky Cop cameras that Memphis has installed, and other cities have too. And they basically, I'm trying to look at the numbers here. I forgot to write down what the numbers were like, but they have 2,100 cameras across the city connected to a command center, live streaming video. And these cameras are point tilt zoom. They are very visible. And one of the things that this article talks about is there has not been a drop in crime having installed all these, and in fact crime has only gone up. And there's and they're paying millions of dollars for these systems, and yet is it worth it? I mean, these cops were standing under one of these cameras in full view and committed this act upon this man. They have the criminals are not being deterred by it, and so it's not a deterrent. So the critics say. What do you guys think of this?
It's a complex topic. I would say that I think the issues lie more with the way the technology is being used than with the technology itself. And yeah. I mean, the trend is, and we saw this in Britain start years ago, is we are safer with more cameras is sort of what we're told. More cameras give us more security. On the other hand, we have the civil libertarians who tell us more cameras mean less freedom, which is also kind of true.
I would be interested to see this is a statistic that you can't get, but it would be interesting to see where crime is on the rise with these cameras. How much of it is because we can now see the crime happening rather than just a crime occurred and nobody really knows what happened. And, it's like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound, like if the camera's not watching someone commit a crime, does that cause a reduction in crime because we just don't know about it?
Right. I mean, I got the sense from the article that we're talking about crimes that get reported one way or the other, property theft and people. It's not that all these crimes are being caught on camera. It's that the cameras are there, but there's still crime being committed throughout the city. There's a lot of back and forth. Like the proponents are saying, how bad would it be? And it was and then the critics will say every bank has had cameras in it forever and people still rob banks. Although
they still get robbed.
Bank robbery is a lot less than it used to be, by the way. So it's actually not a great example when you use it. So I kind of go back and forth because it might be true. Without these, crime might even be worse than it is. But
that's an impossible argument to make, though.
Right.
To me, that's like, that kind of defeats the purpose. Like, you could say that about anything, right?
Right. If I wasn't punching you in the face every day, you might go out and commit a crime. Oh, well, then you might as well punch me in the face every day. The thing that bothers me is what do we lose by having this? And, so it's not a deterrent. And so what they do is they're scanning every license plate of every car. They're watching people go about their lives, surveilling them and doing facial recognition and all this stuff on people who are not criminals. And that part bothers me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it bothers me too when it starts to come to the point where it's used for predictive modeling. Like that's because that's where it's going. I mean, it's data mining. Like nobody's going to sit on something this expensive and not mine the data.
Right. Where they start to say, in this neighborhood, when these people move from this side of the neighborhood to that part of the neighborhood, this kind of crime occurs. That, I mean, I'm being vague because I don't want to, I don't want to be too specific, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's looking at seemingly unrelated behaviors and activity and correlating them with criminal activity. And then we have a problem. Yeah.
You end up with a Minority Report sort of situation, right? Where we're like stopping crimes before they happen. Yeah.
Pre-crime, thought crime. And one of the things that came out of it was also that these systems are in the control of the police, and the people were saying that in relation to this Tyree Nicholas's beating death, is that because the police controlled the cameras, they were watching the whole time it was happening and not doing anything about it because it was cops involved. And so maybe there shouldn't be police in charge of these things. So that's a whole nother question, another layer of accountability and transparency. I mean, it's kind of a technology issue, but it's also kind of a public policy issue as well. And that's what makes it even more complicated. So, something still we still need to grapple with as a society, and people need to be engaged with, I think is a big part of why I wanted to talk about it. So let's talk about two issues that have come up recently, two big technology stories that have affected maybe some of us here on the panel. At least the first one. So the first headline, the Google Pixel Acropolis, which is hard to say, exploit reverses edited parts of screenshots. Now, Jack, you have a Pixel phone, and I gather this affected you. Can you explain what's going on with this in simple terms?
So essentially what it is when you take a screenshot on your phone, it brings up like that little editor. I think iPhone does that too. And you can like crop it, and you can, if you want to like blur something out, you can do that, or add text or whatever. And that's fine. But the problem is there's an exploit in the way it functions where you can take those pictures and reverse the editing on them. You can uncrop them, and you can also erase any of the like blurring or text you've added, which is a big problem. And the issue is it's not just going forward. Like if you've had a Pixel phone for years, you could pull up any of your old pictures from like your old phone that you have in Google Cloud and then do the same thing on them, even though they weren't taken with that phone. So it's not just a device specific thing. It's the way the editor is saving that data, and it's obviously still there in the metadata. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to do this.
Right. And the reason it's a cropping bug is because when the file that you're saving, so you take your original screenshot, and if what you save is smaller, the extra data kind of hangs out at the bottom. Just to think of it that way. And it's there to be decrypted and looked at by someone who can do that. And so if people have posted screenshots that include things like their social security number, they put it on Twitter or the other private data, that stuff may be vulnerable to being, exposed out on the internet. Like not even if it's, you can delete it from your phone. It's not going to help you because if it's already out there. And now it turns out Windows 11 is also vulnerable to this same thing. Although apparently the solution there is, when you've edited the screenshot or edited the image, as long as you name it something new, it will dispose of the extra data. So change the file name, basically. So that's the fix on Windows 11. Again, it doesn't help you for old stuff, but
I do have a fix for Pixel 2, which is a bit roundabout. But if you're taking a screenshot of something, you zoom into what you need, and then you take another screenshot.
Right. That's actually a good solution there. Yeah. Yep.
That works.
Yeah. Until Google gets a patch out to fix it, which they haven't yet. Oh, actually, no, I think they have a patch. Now that I know, I saw something about I think Sophos was saying that Google did get a patch out on that. So that would be good news.
Scary thing about this one though is that the patch won't help you with the old pictures. That's the really creepy part about this one.
Right.
Like, you got to go back and find those pictures. Like if you have them uploaded on your drive, or if you shared them on Reddit or something like that, you know.
Yep. You gotta hunt those down. Yeah, exactly. So, and then, our next story is another big company's behaving badly. Actually, this brings up a controversy, and maybe we should talk about it a little bit too. So there was this whole thing about Samsung's latest phones. They, and I promise you, this is not just an Apple fanboy, jumping on all the other Android guys. These are real issues. Samsung's latest phones had this moonshot feature where they promised that if you took a picture of the moon with your phone, it would use computational photography to improve it and make it look really nice. Because if you've ever tried to take a picture with your phone before, you know that it blows out the image and it's all like just a white dot in the middle of a black screen. I mean, that's just how taking a moon photo is a very actually technically difficult thing unless you know what you're doing. So it's like, oh, great. So people have been taking these photos of the moon. Well, this one guy decided to test it. And what he did was he took an image of the moon, intentionally blurred it so there was no detail to unblur, and then put it up on his computer screen and took a picture of that with his Samsung phone. So there was no detail that they could, like, there was no raw data in the image to get back. And then he gets this beautiful, perfect photo of the moon. And it turns out they're doing one of a few different things, perhaps. They're either like generating an image of the moon, like sort of a AI generation of the moon based on what we know the moon to look like from the photo, or some people speculated they're just taking photos of the moon and overlaying it because there's only so many different angles of the moon you could have a shot from. But that brings up the questions. Computational photography is manipulation of these images automatically by the phone. So how far is too far? What do you guys think?
So the funny thing about this one, with the way he did it, he also did another test where he drew like a smiley face on the blurred picture of the moon, and he took a picture of that and it made it look really nice, but there was like this cratered textured smiley face on the moon. So I think it's doing the first thing where it's doing some overlaying, and basically it knows what the moon looks like, so it makes that look like the moon. I don't think it's like pasting a fake picture of the moon on there.
Okay.
But yeah, and this is a really egregious example of how this technology works. But this is what all phones do, more or less. If you're taking pictures with your phone, you're doing the portrait mode or the lighting mode. It's all computational photography. It's taking pictures that are pretty good, and it's doing a bunch of things in the background computationally to make them look really good. And I guess the philosophical question there is, at what point are these real pictures, and at what point is it just an AI using your photo as a seed to give you something really nice?
I've had some acrimonious debates with my wife where we've decided we're not going to talk about this anymore, about AI imagery, these AI image generators, Midjourney, Dolly, and that sort of stuff, and whether that constitutes art, whether it, and I keep going back to, well, computational photography, if you take a picture with your phone, is that art? And how is that different than giving a prompt to a carefully articulated prompt to these AI art generators? And that's the question, is how far removed from the end product are we still the artist? And there are artists out there who never pick up a brush and never wield a chisel, but who hire a team of skilled workers to create an artwork from their vision. Are they artists? Some people say no. Is a movie director an artist then? These are complex questions, and it applies in this, because is that a photo that you've taken, or is it a construction by an AI based on some data it's gathered through an image sensor?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like this used to be more of an invisible kind of thing. Like, it would just adjust the lighting or, fix some contrast issues and stuff, like the same kind of stuff that you could always do manually with photos. It would just do it for you. But now you get things like the magic eraser on the Pixel phones where you can delete stuff in the background. And Liz and I have actually had that same kind of conversation where I think it's nice. Like if I want to take a picture of my kids on the beach and get rid of the people in the background, that's great. It's our photo. And she's like, you can't erase people from photos. It's erasing them from reality.
No, if I could erase people from reality, I would actually be doing that, but I can't. So
yeah, but it's just like we have this manipulated reality. And I guess that just goes back to photography in general. You are manipulating reality to make it look like what you want. So if the computer's doing it, is that okay?
I mean, let's be honest. Like I took photography classes when I was in high school and college, and you got a picture that was light coming through your camera and hitting a film, because I was still doing film. I wasn't doing digital photography. But I would take that film, and then to process it, I would do all sorts of things to it to make certain colors pop out, or to make the background blurry, to do like a bokeh where there was a blurry background, blurry foreground, but concentrated middle. You know, like all of these things are tricks that artists have been doing forever. If you read Ansel Adams' book, it's about getting a great photograph, but it's also about, developing a great photograph using a lot of these strategies. So we've been doing it forever. Like, is this different than a tool? Is it a tool that's different than what we've been doing, or is it something that's really cheating? Like that's where my I get really blurry on this one, because I feel like it's I know they're doing it. I know that's what's happening.
Right. If you're getting blurry on it, you should use some computational photography to sharpen it up.
You beat me to it.
There you go.
I mean, the fact that just even cropping a photo is altering the reality that the photo took, right? I mean, by not including the whole frame, by cropping it or whatever, it's still altering the reality. I mean, there's a line, but it's hard to define. You know, I kind of feel like this Samsung thing, I think they innocently crossed the line. I don't think they were necessarily intending to be deceptive. I think they just probably saw this as the next evolution of it. What you want is an image of the moon that you saw that night. We'll give it to you. It's not going to be exactly as it came, but they know that all the images that you see, on the phone are not exactly as they came to the image sensor, because that would be nonsensical. You wouldn't be able to. All of that data is just data until they assemble it in a particular way. So I can see from the engineer's point of view, yeah, sure, this is the same sort of thing. Look at this, is awesome. We could do this. I can just picture the meeting, except in Korean, right? But but for the regular person, it's like for most people, we don't realize that there's a difference, and so we're like, wait, that's too far. So yeah, I kind of feel like this is more of a public perception marketing problem than it is a technological issue.
Yeah, I agree. There's also a hard limit to how much light you can collect with those tiny little phone sensors, no matter how many megapixels it has, unless basically, if you want to take real good photos and not cheat, you need to get a DSLR and learn how to actually use it. Otherwise, I'm honestly okay with my phone doing the legwork for me.
Right. And if you want good moonshots,
let's do what it's doing.
Yeah. If you want good moonshots, you need a nice long lens. You need all that sort of stuff, right? Or a telescope. And part of it is our faulty expectations. We have we expect these miracle devices in our pockets to do even more miracles, and and then we get mad when we find out that there's a little man behind the curtain manipulating it. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm sure this is not the last we will hear of these questions. And in fact, I really enjoy the conversation and the debate over what's the line. Is it art? The technology's involvement in this sort of creativity. So I would love to come back to this again in the future. But for now, let us move on to talk about our picks of the week as they change as we're looking at them in the.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to put this thing in.
No, that's fine. You weren't going first anyway. I'm making Jack go first. So Jack, what's your pick this week?
My pick of the week is this small piece of free software. It is actually also open source, so kind of ties into the theme. It's called a Bellina Etcher. and it is a fantastic, simple tool for flashing bootable ISOs or image files to thumb drives or to SD cards. I've actually used it a lot with like those retro handheld gaming devices. For some reason, Windows doesn't really have a good utility for managing formatting on external devices. And this one's really great. You just put it on there. Drop in your image file. It burns it to the thumb drive or to the SD card, and you're good to go. I've not had any issues with it at all. And it really simplifies that process because there's a lot of roundabout ways to do it, but this is just quick and easy. It's free. It's open source also. So there you go.
And I think it's come up in the show before as a way to like put Linux on a thumb drive and boot your computer off it, along with some utilities and that sort of stuff. So cool. Excellent. All right. And Thomas, what's your pick this week?
So I got this really nifty screwdriver set that I wanted to highlight because I'm a tech nerd. I'm an electro geek. I keep a lot of junk I probably shouldn't. And we recently cleaned out my garage, and I have space, and now the space is occupied by my electronics stuff. So I'm actually breaking it down at this point, but I find that I need all sorts of random weird driver bits to do stuff. And so this is a precision screwdriver set that's got 130 different heads to it, and they're not big, so you're not going to get a really good solid everyday screwdriver out of this. But what you're going to get is like all of those little like triangular heads, or the star shaped ones that, you know, it's on the back of a Nintendo Switch. You know, there's like a couple of different little like tri pieces that you can't get at with a regular screwdriver. That's what this guy's for. And so it's a magnetic screwdriver set that has 130 different heads in it that you can use for all sorts of different things. And it also has a lot of little tight space mechanisms that you can add to it. So if you're trying to get inside of electronics, you can just snap it into the front and get into those little hard to reach spots. It's been a lifesaver. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I have a kit like this from iFixit that I just use all the time, and I use it not just for computer stuff, like you said. Like I fix my wife's glasses with it. You know, anything that has tiny little screws. This is perfect. This sort of thing is perfect, and it's inexpensive. It's only $30. So yeah,
this one was. I was surprised. Like I got it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend $30 on it because I don't want to spend too much. And it's been really good quality.
Yeah,
nice,
awesome. Cool. So my pick this week is a cable, not just any cable. This was a kind of a nice little cable. It's a USB A to USB C cable. That the one thing that makes it unique is it has a power LED at one end, so that when it's plugged in and it's powered, so it's plugged in at both ends, it glows green, so that you know that. Did you ever like plug in your phone and you know waiting for it to charge like overnight, and then you realize the other end was unplugged? Oh, drives you crazy. So this is a 5-pack of these cables for $12, so pretty good deal, and they're braided cables, and they glow green when they're plugged in. And that's the primary benefit to these. So it's a nice way. I have it where all the kids plug their stuff in, because I was tired of hearing them go, oh no, my screen time and my thing is uncharged, even though it was plugged in. Is it plugged in on the other end? Yeah. So
add to cart, click.
Exactly. Oh man, yeah. Like these, and because it's a 5-pack, because A, I have 5 kids, but B, you go through them. Like any parent knows how fast you go through these cables on a regular basis. So that's mine. It's USB-C fast charging, so it's rated to do the higher power levels to charge faster. So that's really great. All right, so that should do it for this time. We would love to get your feedback on anything we talked about tonight. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to technology@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. I'll have links from our discussion for everything we talked about and our picks of the week in our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC204. That's Tech 204. If you can, we would really appreciate it. It really helps us out a lot when you write a review of the show in Apple Podcasts or wherever you can write reviews of podcasts. Share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow our community, reach more listeners. And frankly, I think we do a service for the community out there, helping explain technology in ways that really are helpful to people. We'd like to thank James for research assistance on this episode. And until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
It's been a pleasure.
Jack Baruzzini, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.